Part 8. On the 26th of January, I was finally moved out of isolation ICU into isolation ward. I still had a bit of a temperature, but it wasn't as high as it had been at weekend. I was moved upstairs in my wheelchair, all my belongings on my lap, and just happy to get out of my glass box. I didn't know what to expect in isolation, but I enjoyed my trip up. Seeing more people walking about, I'd awkwardly wave to people who made eye contact, and then the nurse took me into a room with a few glass boxes in them. Blue curtains covering the boxes so no one could see in or out. I knew there were people in those glass boxes because one of them had her door open and waved at me as I came in. I was put in my new glass box surrounded by blue curtains and got into bed. There was a window behind me which I tried to turn around to, but it was just right behind me and there's no way I could turn around. Anyway, the nurse left closing the door, completely closing me into my blue surroundings with the outside behind me that I don't have the energy to turn around and look at. I can't see the outside. I know it doesn't seem like much and it shouldn't be a big deal, but this was deflating. It even made me miss my ICU glass box. I lay there staring at the blue around me. I quietly curled into a ball and sobbed. I can't do this. God, please help me. Get me out of here. And I cried myself to sleep. I woke up a few hours later and still looking at my blue surroundings. And then I came to the realization, you know what? It's better if I don't like the room, because then I will want to get out of here quicker. Not like I wasn't trying to get out of there, but in my head this made sense. Again, also asking, God, please help me with this. I still felt bummed, and I also realized that depression was slowly sneaking in again. I could feel everything getting darker and then slowly engulfing me. I have all the right to be sad and let it overtake me, and I really wanted to. I was also just so tired. Emotionally, physically, I wanted to give up. Just let the clouds swallow me and deal with the consequences later. God gently pointed all this out to me. I sat in the closed-off room looking at my dull surroundings, realizing what God was showing me. I wanted to give up and let the cloud take me because I was tired of fighting, but He wanted to fight on my behalf. He also showed me that the further I slipped into depression, the harder it would be for me to get out. Okay, God, the only way I can get through this is if You pull me through it, because I don't have the strength or knowledge or know-how to pull myself out of this ditch. This ditch that's made of mud, that every time I touch the sides trying to climb out of it slides in and collapses on me. Now I fall back even more covered by the sticky mud. At this stage I can't even see the light at the top of the ditch. I need You to pull me out of it, and I know You will. It's weird because even though I still felt tired, I felt like I could fight again. I re-looked at my surroundings. It sucks, but I'm not alone. I don't know how, but God will get me through this. I re-listened to that hymn and put on a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. A few hours later, the nurse came back in with the wheelchair saying, my room is ready. Again confused, my default setting at this point. I'm like, what room? She explained that I've been moved into a contagion isolation room because of how contagious I am. I can't be in this blue room long term because I'm too close to other patients. They just put me here while the room got cleaned out and disinfected. I'm wheeled into another room, and it's a proper room. My own room. It has my own bathroom, a little desk which I can keep my stuff on, and it has a balcony with a chair on it looking over the harbor. I let out an audible wow. Again, asking if she's sure this is where I'm supposed to be staying. She explained everything again. She also explained I'm not to leave the room at all, and anyone that comes in still has to be wearing plastic apron and gloves. Visitors need to wear plastic upon entering, just to stop germs from getting in and then leaving, as the aprons would be thrown away into a biohazard bin, same as it was in ICU. And I'm reminded to tell every person who walks into here to wash their hands with soap and water when entering and leaving, because sanitizer does not work for something this contagious. After she got me settled in and left, I leaned back looking at my room again. No one was watching me in a glass box 24/7. I'm not attached to machines. I still have an IV, but that's only there for medication, so I can freely roam the room. I can sit on the balcony and look out at the ocean or the people below. I think I was on the 4th floor. It doesn't have a strong disinfectant smell. It's still there, but it's not as strong as ICU. I smiled looking around. I can totally do this. Thank you God so much for this room. When my parents walked in, they had the same reaction I had. Wow. My dad goes looking around. This is like a hotel room. Except they can leave and I can't, but this is still amazing. I also asked my parents to bring me my small Bible with because I was struggling to read the Bible app on my phone. I'd usually let it read to me audibly, but I just wanted a book in my hands because there's nothing like holding a physical book. Dr. Professor sees them bring in my Bible, and when they're leaving, he says to my parents in a joking way, I see you bringing in the big guns. They chuckle back, and my mom says, yes, she's struggling to see on the app. Dr. Professor gets serious and says, Mrs. Mom, I don't know what you believe in, but we need a miracle. My mom responds, we are Christians and we are praying. There are many people praying for her. He nods, saying nothing, and they leave. Back in my room, Dr. Professor starts me on oral vancomycin. This is a weird thing because this is usually an antibiotic that is given through the IV, but I had to drink it. He made notes all over my charts so the nurses would give it to me correctly. As he was leaving, he turns and points to the Bible and says, "It's good that you have that. Just make sure all your face systems are right." I chuckle, giving him a thumbs up and saying, "Always." It's only in hindsight that I realized he was telling me I was dying, and to make sure I'm ready if and when that happens. I think that me not realizing what he was saying was good though, because every person that I told the story to would always respond in shock when I said that. And that's not how I responded. I just went on with my day. Now this is where the problem comes in. Yes, another problem. Because vancomycin given orally isn't a thing, the staff would usually think it's a mistake. So I sometimes get it orally and I sometimes get it to the IV. And because I couldn't remember the name of it, I couldn't correct them. All I knew was that I was supposed to have 2 gross tasting liquids. One of them was penicillin and the other was this stuff. So when some of the nurses giving me the medication would read this, they'd administer it incorrectly, which meant I wasn't getting the medication correctly, which we still had no idea if this was going to work, and because of this, it was causing more problems with me. The one nurse giving me the medication paused, seeing what was written down. She tried to ask me, but I don't know the names. I told her I'm supposed to be drinking 2 different things, and is that the one that tastes really, really bad? Which didn't help her because all of this is completely new, and no one's ever tasted this because no one's supposed to be drinking this. Other nurses who I had asked and I said, "Wait, I'm supposed to be drinking 2 things," would shake their heads saying, "No, it's only the penicillin." So when the nurse who spotted the writing was like, "Hang on, if this is supposed to be given orally, this is not being given correctly." She locked everything up before giving me anything and excused herself to go find Dr. Professor to ask him. Well, he came down on her like a ton of bricks, which isn't super fair because she was the one that spotted that this needs special attention because it's so weird. But also, to be fair, on his side, he did write it down and expected the orders to be followed. There was all this commotion that went down, and then Dr. Professor came into my room moaning at me for not telling them. I'm like, "What? I tried. I don't know what this stuff is called." He explained everything clearly to me and said, "I need to make sure they give this to me correctly, and if they want to fight, they must call him." Needless to say, no one made this mistake again. I was taken for another scope. Again, I'm fully awake. But the colon is looking better. It's still very much green, but it doesn't look like pond water anymore. Still not a normal color, but much better. Afterwards, Dr. Professor explains the way forward. I'm still not out of danger, but this is the plan. There are 3 things we will try. The first plan is with oral vancomycin. Where the problem comes in is that in trying to treat the original abdominal pain that I was admitted to hospital for, that medication to treat that feeds a superbug. But then the medication to treat the superbug aggravates my condition. So Dr. Professor would have to find a balance. There are 5 types of antibiotics that they can try, and they've discovered that the first 3 are a no-go. So if the vancomycin doesn't work, they can try one more, but that's not really an option either. If option 1 doesn't work, the second option is still experimental, but it would be tried. It's called a fecal transplant, also known as a fecal microbial transplantation. I'm probably not saying that correctly, but my mouth won't let me say it. What a fecal transplant is that they would take a healthy person's bacteria from their gut, and the person has to have no history of any stomach issues or disease. Doctors would take that bacteria from the donor's poop, clean it up, and be left with only good bacteria. Then they would replace all the bacteria in my gut with a healthy person's bacteria. The danger of this is that it acts as an organ transplant, so there's a risk of my body rejecting it. And then also the challenge of finding a healthy person that matches me. As far as I understand from research now, the body rejecting the transplant now isn't actually as high as I initially thought it was. I'm no doctor, and if you're interested, you should definitely go check it out. What was cool and kind of funny is when family and friends found out that this might be one of the options, the whole church volunteered to be donors. We had to chuckle, thinking about everybody carrying little white buckets filled with poop to be tested. The third option, which would always be the last option, is to remove the colon completely. But I would not survive surgery. So that wasn't even an option Dr. Professor was looking at. Our first option was the oral vancomycin, and since this hadn't been tried before, we were still in very much unknown territory. So when a nurse came in to give me my medication, I wouldn't let them leave until I had all the pieces in front of me. I knew the game plan, I could play the game and help, and I have quite high stakes in the game, so I'm committed. The one morning, Dr. D walks in to meet me for the first time. This is the doctor that Dr. S had originally referred me to. The doctor that had been on leave and then taken another week off when he heard about my case. He comes in standing at the door and meets me. I greet him and he leaves, and I go back to staring out my window. Suddenly he rushes back in, all shocked. Dr. D tells me, "We have to take you into surgery. We have to remove your whole colon," and leaves again. shocked. The whole point of taking surgery off the table was because I wouldn't survive. And now he wanted to operate? He's essentially telling me I'm going to die here. And if I survive, everything changes and I get a colostomy bag. But I'm not going to survive this. Dr. Surgeon and Dr. Professor both clearly stated I would not survive surgery. It's not like it's a year later and I've recovered. I'm still very much in the woods. I don't know how to respond to that. And I start crying. Completely overwhelmed by this information that I just received. I thought we had a plan. I thought it was too dangerous. I'm never gonna leave here. I'm gonna die in this hospital. Dr. D walks back in. He forgot something and he sees me crying. He looks all confused at me and asks, "Why are you crying?" Why am I? Are you kidding me? I couldn't even answer him. I just stared at him for a full moment trying to process how to begin answering this question. Dr. D then pops up, "I'll get someone to come in and see you and talk to you," and then leaves again. I feel like a truck just slammed into my emotions and then for good measure drove back and forth over them. I was so shocked. I was confused and terrified. Like, I'm not going to get out of here. My parents come in to see me a while later and I broke down telling them what had happened. They looked confused and shocked too. They also knew the plan. They knew what Dr. Professor had said about each step in the plan. And step 3 was off the table completely because it was dangerous. My mom just said, "Let's just speak to Dr. Professor first and see what he has to say." We have a very solemn visit. My parents tried cheering me up, but the traitor's sitting there. It's not going anywhere. We pray together and then they leave. Later on, I'm lying in bed, just looking out the window, when Dr. Professor storms in again, walking with such a purpose that no one would be able to stop him. He looks at me and says, "Don't listen to anything Dr. D has to say. He hasn't seen how bad you were and how much you've improved. I've told him to leave you to me and not to even look at your file. If anyone comes in here trying to get you to sign something or talking about surgery, you send them right to me and you make sure not to sign anything. I will look at anything that comes up and I'll discuss it directly with you. Surgery is still off the table. It is still too dangerous. Do you understand?" I just nod, which he nodded back and he promptly left the room. To say I felt relief is an understatement. It was really good to know that Dr. Professor was paying attention and he was on my side. Like, I knew he was on my side, but it was cool seeing it and also seeing he didn't seem to care about the hospital politics and cared about the patient first. When my parents found out about this, they were also visibly relieved. The next day, a psychologist walks in to see me. Dr. D had set up the meeting and never cancelled it when he was told not to interfere with my case. She was very nice. I was feeling really good because, well, I knew surgery wasn't on the table anymore. And I also knew that Dr. Professor had my back. She chatted a bit and then asked me some questions and then left it with "You're handling this as well as anyone can in your situation. I'm not sure as to why I was called here." I explained that Dr. D said that he would send someone to see me because he was confused as to why I was crying after he had just told me that I had to get surgery that I was told I wouldn't survive. She just shook her head. I could see she wasn't impressed with the complete lack of understanding for patients and what they were going through. She gave me her card and said, "Well, if you ever feel like chatting and processing, give me a call and I'll come right back in to see you." I liked her. I never did call her back and I did lose the card shortly after, but she was really cool. Oh, and the physiotherapist even popped his head in one afternoon and was surprised to still see me and teased, "You're still here? When are you going home?" I'm trying, but my escape plans aren't working. The difference between people who care about their job and those just doing it for a source of income is huge. I know income is important, but the passion seen by a person who loves helping people versus the one that loves making money is a huge difference. And it makes a huge difference for the patients and how they feel. Being hospitalized isn't fun and generally the worst time in someone's life. And having someone just see you as a paycheck doesn't really help morale. But I digress. My grandparents came up for the weekend and stayed by my mom while my dad went home for the weekend to get some stuff sorted out at his company. The plan was that they could come up and then be able to see me. They hadn't seen me in person since that night I was moved from hospital 1 to hospital 2. So they were quite anxious to see me again. They came for a morning visiting hour. Oh, in ICU, I was only allowed 2 hours a day for visits. But here in general ward, even though I'm still in isolation, I was allowed 3 hours a day. Okay, how great is that? Everyone just had to be careful, which is fine. They were all careful. They were very, very great. So when my grandparents and my mom came in to see me in the morning, I was chatting and joking with them, sitting up and feeling good. But when they came back for the afternoon visit, I was bad again. They were horrified at how quickly I would go from good to bad. My mom would talk them through and explain that this is how it's been going for a while and to just keep praying. They stayed for the weekend, visiting both Saturday and Sunday before they headed back home again. And my dad came up and joined my mom again. And the cycle continued.